This is the BAM School Podcast, where we talk about business adventure and mission with your host, Buddy Rathmel.
All right, welcome to the BAM School Podcast. I'm here with my guest, James Lincoln, who is on mostly vacation in Hawaii at the moment and working a little bit out there before the kids get up out at the beach. And we've connected on X, and I just thought he would be a great guest for the BAM School Podcast. He has scaled his own agency and started some coaching things, and just want to hear more of his story. So James, welcome to the BAM School Podcast.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. Stoked to be here.
Yeah. So give us a little bit, like 90 seconds of your bio, getting you, to kind of where you are now, wife, kids, background, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. So I grew up in upstate New York. So I'm a New Yorker at heart. I've got two daughters, about 2 and 4. They're both about to turn 2 and 4. I've been married for 7 years. My wife is incredible, like huge facilitator for everything I've done. That was I was young when I got married, and that was like the best decision I made, and I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah.
I live in Utah. So I'm out in Utah. I moved out to Utah. We kind of lived all over, but I lived in California for a little bit, down in Texas, and then came back to Utah where I did my undergrad. I came back to Utah for an MBA, mostly because I wanted to do acquisitions. My background, I'd started a small little micro SaaS company after my undergrad, and then I worked in healthcare portfolio management for large IT organizations within healthcare. Learned about entrepreneurship through acquisition, was super stoked on it, went back to school to acquire a business. And then along the way, I started my agency, Goodly Growth. And that's where I am today. I haven't bought anything yet, but I'm like kind of doubling down on Goodly and trying to grow that and get that to a point where I can more easily go buy stuff.
Yeah, nice. So where did you grow up in upstate New York?
Outside of Albany.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you said up, I grew up in northern New York, like up in Watertown. So.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Actually quite a few hours away, but kind of same general area. So tell me about your MBA, deciding to do that. What have been the benefits for you, even as you've started? I know in like the SMB Twitter world, kind of MBAs sometimes get, a bad rap, or just people are like, just go do it. What was your experience and your advice to other young people that want to be entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty high on MBAs when they're done right. I always planned on getting an MBA. Like my undergrad was in psych, so I'm like, I got nothing out of my undergrad other than like a piece of paper. And so I planned on getting an MBA. I wanted to like get a higher level of education than my parents did, and like they believed in that. Like they're both high on education. For me, like getting an MBA was like an easy first step to being an entrepreneur for a few reasons. Number one, I was able to leave my job, which was a great job. Like I had a phenomenal job down in Texas working at a large health system. Phenomenal job. And it let me leave that job without burning any bridges.
Yeah.
So much so that I even went back to that job after my first semester and like was able to work through most of my MBA while I was getting my agency off the ground.
Yeah.
So like that's the first thing, is like you don't burn any bridges with like your current network. The second is like it helped warm up everyone around me to this idea of like, hey, I'm going to go buy a business or be an entrepreneur. Like, like that was all I talked about. And for my parents, like the key groups of people, right, were my parents, my in-laws, and like mainly my wife.
Yeah.
And my wife's generally always been on board. But like, if I had just said, hey, I'm quitting my job today, I'm going to start an agency, or I'm going to go buy a business and like start looking for a business, it wouldn't have gone over.
Yeah.
So the MBA like gave me a 2-year runway to be doing the things, like to actually be doing those things and talking about them and like helping people get warmed up to them. The key being, I don't think you should go into debt for an MBA, right? So like my MBA, I had a full scholarship to BYU. right? Even like off full scholarship, like the tuition at BYU is largely subsidized, and
Yeah.
an MBA, like full cost MBA is like 28 grand, right,
Yeah.
for the full program. So I'm
Okay.
like, if you have a little bit of money saved, like you put it into that. And then the other key was that during my MBA, like I knew exactly what I wanted out of my MBA,
Yeah.
and that was to buy a business.
Right.
So everything I was doing was intended to buy a business. I was getting credit for building my business goodly, for looking for businesses to buy. And I had the advantage of getting all of the resources from the school,
Yeah.
right? Like these schools have they do have great resources. You can play the student card, there's grants you can get. I got free office space. I got access to databases I otherwise wouldn't have gotten. So I'm just like, if you're young and like can get into a program, um, honestly, scholarships are largely just dependent on a test score, right? Like I had a terrible GPA, right? But like I got a good test score on the GRE, right? I didn't have to take the GMAT,
Yeah.
and it was a massive game changer for me, right? Because it let me focus on building,
That's cool.
right, unencumbered by having to like be at a full-time job. And granted, I went back to my full-time job, but like I was able to do that even in a way that just made sense, right? Like they were letting me get my MBA. And so part of my MBA was it just worked out. And I'm getting a little ranty here, but like I go back to get a full-time job. They know I'm getting an MBA. So it's like I'm working full-time with the luxury of having flexibility for my MBA. But part of my MBA, I'm getting credit for looking for businesses and for building my business. So I'm like doing all three at the same time. And it
Yeah.
doesn't end up being as much of a time suck as it would truly be to be doing all three things full time.
Yeah. So quick question on that. When did you start your MBA and have you finished it?
Yeah, I did finish. I graduated in April. So I started in September or, late August 2022 and just finished 2 months ago.
So I actually, my plan when I moved back to the States a couple years ago was actually to buy a business, started a search site and actually set up a
Mm-hmm.
holdco. It's Star City Capital. And I actually got into the process with a seller, bad, I would say bad business broker experience that kind of
Mm-hmm.
like soured me on that. I was like never going through a broker again. And then I learned later, like it's not isolated, but he just wasn't like a good broker. And they were using PPE money as part of the profits, and he was hiding that from me. So they wanted me to buy on a multiple, including PPE money that was never going to be seen again. And I was like, this is just crazy. I was like, and for that reason, I'm
Yeah.
out. And I had talked to a couple people while I was calling, business owners, and I thought about buying an agency. And I talked to one dude and he's like, why don't you just start an agency? Like you already know how to do a service. And I was like, yeah, that's probably the route I need to go for now. But when you were looking at, or still are looking at buying a business, what kind of niches are you interested in? What are your kind of search parameters for what you're looking for?
Oh, that's a good question. And I don't have a great answer, honestly, right? So when I started my MBA program, I was looking for like the traditional blue collar, home services businesses, like brick and mortar businesses. And I had one under contract that I was pretty excited about. They manufactured wooden boxes, like gift boxes, and they'd sell those to companies. Um, and it ended up falling through, for some like customer concentration reasons. I think one of the customers just like got wind of it and wasn't super happy about it. Um, and it was at that point, right, that I decided like, I'd gone through the whole process, to the point of like going to get a HELOC out on my house and um, like we had everything lined up. I was probably a couple weeks away from closing. And, and I realized coming out of that I wasn't in as strong of a financial position as I wanted to be to buy.
Yeah.
Because like I didn't want to have to be beholden to investors. I didn't necessarily want to have to bring a bunch of money on to go to go get a deal done.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to start Goodly.
Yeah.
That was January 2023. And I'm like, you know what? I should make some money, right? And like get some cash flow. Also, cash flow will like allow me to search without having to get a full-time job
Yeah.
after my program. Because again, we were burning through money, you know?
Yeah.
So that was when I went back, I got a job to get the cash flow up, right? Just through like a W-2, started my agency. And for, you know, the last year, I've been like solely focused on building Goodly, right? And like getting my cash flow up. It
Yeah.
wasn't until March of this year that I like kind of pumped the brakes a little bit and was like, okay, what's my thesis on how I want to like continue searching and like going to buy a business? And
Yeah.
enough people have kind of told me like, you're crazy to, you know, walk away from something at Goodly that's like on the cusp of making real money. Like I make great money and like I mean, you can support my family, but I mean, I'm not putting off $100,000, you know, $100,000 a month,
Yeah.
which would go a long ways to an acquisition. So I've put that a bit on hold. I haven't really thought about it. I've been intentionally
Yeah.
trying not to think about it a ton. I
Yeah.
will say though, in like the last few months, and especially being here in Hawaii, I'm like, man, do I want to go the brick and mortar route and like the blue collar
Yeah.
business, or do I want to like build a digital asset portfolio, like you know, Andrew Wilkinson at Tiny or Red Ventures, out in North Carolina. Like those are two businesses, and I'm like, man, they've built phenomenal portfolios of just digital assets, which would
Yeah.
allow me to kind of live the lifestyle that, you know, I've been living while still doing acquisitions. So I'm trying to push that off until like maybe December, right?
Yeah.
Just like get through this year, try and hit some of our goals like Goodly, and then, you know, worry about that again in January.
Yeah.
But you know, to be determined.
Yeah. Cool. So, tell me some of like the challenges in Goodly. How did you get your initial clients? You know, what have been some of the joys in running that? Obviously, the freedom to work from Hawaii for 35 days. But what have been some of the highs and lows with the first 18 months in your agency?
Yeah, highs. I mean, like it's just anytime you make money, right? So I'd had a business before. You know, I had a few partners in that business. It was a good business, but you know, the partnerships kind of pulled it down a little bit. We didn't structure them properly.
Yeah.
Um, and so like going and like selling myself and owning the business outright, like anytime you do that and you start getting some sales and you get some money in the door, like that's as high as it can get. You know, like
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
there's nothing like your first few sales. It's just like a euphoric feeling of like, what the freak, this works.
Yeah.
Um, so like building it has been awesome. Building a team has been really fun. I've got 10 employees right now. We've got 2 here in the US. It's just been like a master class for me on like running, like being a leader. You know,
Yeah.
I think like growing up, everybody thinks like, oh, I'm a leader, I'm a leader. And maybe not everybody thinks that, but like that's
Right.
kind of how I was like conditioned to think through everything that I did as a kid, sports, and like I did Boy Scouts and different things. And it's like, you know, I'm a leader. And then you like get to the point of actually leading people and you realize like it's not that easy. And
Yeah.
so that's been really, you know, humbling, but like also a really like fun experience to just be thrown into it.
Yeah.
Lows, I mean, I haven't really had any financial lows, I'd say. You know, the business has done well. I think the biggest low for me is like there's some stress. Like even though like we've done well financially, like there's stress and it's like
Yeah.
I feel like it can all fall apart tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, so that like that weighs on you a little bit. I don't know if that ever goes away.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's been an awesome journey. Like I've evolved, and I think this is like true for anybody that's an entrepreneur. It's like
Yeah.
you evolve exponentially over time. You know, I look back and like it's been 18 months, and 18 months ago, if you had told me I'd be like sitting on the beach in Hawaii, because my agency did really well, like I'd have said, you know, called BS. Um, and it's just like you just grow and your mind is opened. And like now I think about things that I just wouldn't have ever thought about 18 months ago, right? I have like goals that I wouldn't have
Yeah.
had. And so it's a phenomenal learning experience to be an entrepreneur. The key is just to make sure that you can get by and stay in the game long enough. You
Yeah.
know, that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Yeah. I resonate with a lot of what you just shared. I'm in the last couple months, I've gone from like, oh, I hope I make a sale this month so I can do payroll, um, to, yeah, then it's like the stress just switches to something else. It's like, it's funny because I thought, oh,
Yeah.
once the money comes in, then, but it's like, then you're like, okay, are all the clients happy? Staff working out, processes, systems. I've tried multiple times. My dream when I started this agency was like, oh, I'm going to find like the best outsourcer in the world. And then I'll just get clients all day and I won't worry about fulfillment. And like, I tried multiple times, multiple people, even just again, I tried like 2 months ago and I had to, I actually wrote the client yesterday and said, hey, I didn't tell him why, but I just was like, "Hey, you're not ranking like I had wanted. Um, I'm not going to charge you this next month." But what happened was I outsourced that piece, and I was like, "Dang, I'm bringing it back in."
Mm.
And so that's been a piece for me of just like the stress of like, okay, I gotta build the team and do my own processes because I know that works. And yeah, so I get that how the stress uh, changes, and I think you're right. Like it doesn't matter if it's digital, in person, real estate. I don't think you ever fully, even if everything is in the stock market in CDs, there's still like stress when the Fed rate changes or whatever
Yeah.
else. Um, yeah, kind of interesting that we both were thinking buy a business and then fell into agencies or I guess I had done the what I'm doing for years and I'd done SEO like 15 years ago, so it was kind of a natural um, progression, I guess. What is the primary service that you offer? Is it primarily SEO that you're offering your clients?
Yeah. So local SEO, right? We work with home service businesses. So we'll do
Yeah,
web development. I'd say it's like somewhat basic web development
yeah,
and then SEO, right? We
yeah,
don't do paid ads. I actually spun up with a partner, a paid ads agency just like 2 months ago.
yeah,
So that's a separate company that we
yeah,
can refer people to. I'm thinking about doing something similar with web development and like building a little higher end web development agency.
yeah,
But right now, actively, it's just local SEO. We've niched down into that. We used to do everything, and that's a
yeah,
mistake. But
yeah.
yeah, so now we're just focused on local SEO.
And do you have like a upfront fee and then a lower monthly, or is it annual, or how are you charging clients?
Yeah, we just charge monthly, so we don't do any startup costs or
Yeah,
like intro fees, and we don't do contracts. So it's just
yeah,
our rates range from $1,000 to $2,000 a month.
yeah,
Um, we used to charge much less, like our for a long time it was like between $300 to $500 a month because it's just
yeah.
easier to sell, right?
Right.
But you learn like, oh, that's actually a headache, and like those customers aren't great customers.
Yeah,
Um, and so we've been, we shifted our pricing model. Now we charge between 1,000 to 2,000 a month,
yeah,
and yeah, it's just a monthly retainer.
yeah. Nice. Yeah, that I started off at an annual price point, but then once I got over 10 grand, um, it started being tougher to sell the annual, for someone to drop a check for. I did have my first client at 15 drop a check for 15, but then after
Hmm.
that, they're like, hey, could we go monthly, make sure this
Yeah,
works? Which totally makes sense, from their perspective, because a lot of people don't deliver. So yeah, makes sense. Well, so I'm just broke like maybe 120K for the first year. And um, July 1st is when I think of like, okay, that's a year. that was when I needed to start making income, even though I picked up a couple clients in February and May. But what advice would you have for me if I want to grow from 6-figure to 7-figure? What are kind of the first things that you coach people when you're coaching in that?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think so. You said you did 120K your first year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what are you? I mean, the first year is wrapping up. It sounds like this week.
Yeah.
Um. Okay. And of that 120K, that's like annual contracts. You've collected that money that you have like annual work to deliver on, right? So that's essentially like what would you peg your MRR at?
It's tough because my MRR like that I have for sure coming in is only like 30, well, about 4,000. But then
4,000.
I can get like 10 to 20 in annual contracts a month.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
like
Okay.
I only did 30 in the first 7 months. Really like half of that has been in like the last 2.5 months. So.
Okay. And in terms of like team, like talk to me. You said you're moving away from outsourcing and into like building an internal team. What do you have in place today for fulfillment?
Yeah, I have one full-time SEO guy out of Mexico, and then I have a part-time contractor I use out of the Philippines, and then me.
Okay. And sales channels, is it just coming off of X?
Uh, Honestly, until about 2 months ago, everything was referral based.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just started this year. I was like, okay, I'm going to play bigger. I think I've had 1 or 2 sales from X, and like got a lead yesterday from Reddit. I have done nothing intentional outbound, really. Very
Okay.
little.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, I think when you think about now, like granted, I haven't hit 7K yet, or seven
Yeah.
figures yet. You know, like this year we're projecting about 750K in revenue.
Yeah.
Um, and I, I'm expecting by November, December that we're crossing that 1 million ARR mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't really measure anything in ARR, but I'm like, when we hit 1 million ARR, I'll like, acknowledge ARR, but mostly
Yeah.
we're just focused on monthly recurring revenue.
Yeah.
So like it all comes with the caveat of like, I haven't hit 7 figures,
Yeah.
but I think that anytime you're trying to scale up to that, it comes down to like, what's your process for getting customers and what's your process for retaining customers, right? And retaining customers is going to be all about your fulfillment. Like, do you have the systems and the people in place to fulfill? Because like right now, if you're charging, if your average contract value is about 10 grand a year or 20 grand a year, let's say, even like you've got to clear 40 customers at 20K. I mean, really, what, like 50 customers at 20K a year to hit $1 million. So like what would having 50 customers actually look like on the delivery side for you? Like, do you have the systems in place to hire the people you need to actually fulfill 50 customers well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that comes down to SOPs
Yeah.
and like you'll find that like hiring. So like right now we're hiring a lot of people. And we've kind of shifted our hiring model to like bringing on some like junior SEO specialists and some mid-tier SEO specialists and having like 1 or 2 high-tier SEO specialists. So we've got like a squad model that'll have like 7 people on a squad, and like 7 people will be able to manage about 70 clients, right? Like we'll have 70 clients managed within that pod. But having like junior level SEO people come on requires like really robust SOPs and training. And like you just have to tell them, this is what you do, go do it.
Yeah.
And that can be really hard to develop. And so you end up having to rely on people that can like think critically and intuitively and understand it well enough. But now you're going to get like really large sways in like performance. Because you don't have a standard. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. So like, you got to think through like, how do I build that system?
Yeah.
And like where you're at today, like if that hasn't broken down yet, if your delivery hasn't broken down, you haven't sold enough. And
Yeah.
so I always think like, okay, let me go sell. Like I've been sales first. Like that's
Yeah.
kind of how I'm wired. So let me
Yeah.
go sell and sell till everything breaks. And then
Yeah.
once everything breaks, I'll like slow down a little bit and fix it, right? And like
Yeah.
scale it up for the next phase of growth.
Yeah.
Um, I may lose a customer or two, right, in
Yeah.
that process because it's like something just goes, you know, unattended or like it's just something flew under the radar, and like yes, that's disappointing, and like we've had to
Yeah.
refund some people, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like, you know, we totally botched things up on that, like that was
Yeah.
our bad. But that doesn't happen as much as you think it would, and like you're still able to, you know, like I've always still been able to tweak some things on the delivery side to keep
Yeah.
up along the way.
Yeah.
I would just say like for us it was at like you know, probably 15K a month, and then again at like 30K a month in
Yeah.
monthly recurring revenue, that things just like absolutely broke down, and it was like,
Yeah.
okay, we got some real work to do to fix this. So get your delivery side, get your delivery side to a point where you're confident you can support the 50 customers you need, and
Yeah.
then you have to it's just sales, right?
Yeah.
It's just figuring out like, how do I get in front of enough people every single day
Yeah.
to sell 50 people in, you know, a quarter. Like I don't think there's really any reason why you couldn't sell 50 people in a quarter, right? Like
Yeah.
we close 12 to 15 deals a month, right?
Nice.
So I mean that puts us at like 36 to 45 in a quarter. You know, but like I think realistically with some like really robust sales processes, you could
Yeah.
hit $1 million. You know, you could hit your 7 figures by the end of this year, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a possibility. And I've kind of gone the other way, which I definitely get too worried about fulfilling. So like I didn't, and I hate the boringness of like the work, like the actual work. Once I brought somebody on full time was really when I had the like just bandwidth or energy to kind of do sales a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I could probably handle another um, like 15 clients before I need to hire someone again. Um, and you know, with those two guys, I probably can handle like another 15. So I really need like, you know, just as you talk, I'm like, yeah, I really need to go out and do more sales, put some of those things. We are writing a book right now. And we're going to run ads to that. Um, and I'm thinking about hiring somebody just to do biz dev.
Mm-hmm.
And then I need to do some. I've done, you know, very, very little. Um, and so it's been cool because I've built like a good product, and then I've gotten great referrals because people are like, okay, this works, this works, this works. You know, my first 5, 6 clients were all from somebody else telling somebody else.
Yeah.
But that's not a consistent way to grow or long-term growth plan, you know? Um, so yeah, that's those really good, good thoughts for me. Yeah, basically just need to get off my butt and do sales is like the number one.
Yeah. And I mean, I tell people all the time, like if you need to get in front of, like, you need to close 15 deals, right?
Yeah.
Like 15 deals would be like 300K at that 20K price
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
They do that. Yeah. 300K. So, like that's not a ton of deals.
Yeah.
And you can do that without a biz dev person. You could do it without like you could go out there and you could be like just messaging people on X, on Facebook, and
Yeah.
like it's a low number of people to have to close
Yeah.
that like you could do it pretty manually, you know?
Yeah.
It's when you're saying like, hey, I want to close 15 a month and I want to do that in perpetuity. Like
Yeah.
now you've got to have really robust systems because you've got to have enough leads coming in every month. Like for us, we close about 7% of every lead generated, right? That includes bad leads, it includes unqualified leads. Like for qualified leads, we're closing about 25, ranges month over month between like 25 and 30%. So I'm
That's
like,
awesome.
for us to get 15 leads closed, we need 60 qualified leads every
Yeah.
month. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of work to get 60 qualified leads every month.
Yeah.
Um, to get 60 qualified leads, we gotta get in front of 600 people, right?
Yeah.
That's actually, the math on that is a little off, but to close 15 deals, right? We need about 180 leads coming in,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those could be unqualified, they could be whatever, but like we need about 180 leads coming in, and like, I mean, that's a lot of calls to make, that's a lot of emails to send.
Yeah.
Like it's a system in and of itself to get that up and running, and get and get that many people through the door. But 15, like, man, you should be sending 25 Facebook messages a day easily. Like, I push people, like people that are just getting started, and like maybe they hire a cold caller, right? Like we've done all of our selling through cold calling.
Yeah.
I think in the
Nice.
past 2 months, we've had some email marketing that we've launched, and we've gotten some deals off that. But like, essentially, it's all cold calling. And, I tell people, like, hire a cold caller, right? Give them a list. But then for people that are just starting out and are full time, like, get on Facebook and message 100 people a day.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get 1 or 2 good conversations from that.
Yeah.
And if you can get 1 or 2 good conversations a day, right, over the course of a month, like, all of a sudden you've gotten your 30 to 60 leads.
Yeah. No, that's really good thought.
I don't think it's
like I could do the same
with
hiring like an appointment setter where they're starting those conversations for me, and then I can jump in and pick up. It is, in some ways, like, I mean, it's good just to sit down and with you. I mean, it's even just inspiring to go, hey, here's somebody who's younger than me, who's done it way faster, just because you've done the things that I need to be doing, so that's awesome. So, Digital Side Hustle Academy, you recently started with a test group with that, something that you want to bring people in. Tell me about that, your vision for that, what you have done, some of your early results.
Yeah. So the idea behind Digital Side Hustle Academy, I guess, is just like, there's a lot of people that want to get out of W-2 and don't really know how. I think that, like, I built my agency while I was getting my full-time MBA, and like, honestly, while I had a job, right? So I had like and we kind of talked about that, right? So like, it wasn't necessarily like I was working 40 hours a week and going to school 40 hours a week and like building my agency on the side, but like, largely, I built my agency with maybe 10 to 15 hours a week of work, up until a couple months ago when I jumped in full time. And I think that, like, the knowing, like, there's just something that's like absolutely life changing about getting some monthly recurring revenue into your life.
Yeah.
And most people that, like, most people aren't making 200K a year at their W-2.
Yeah.
Right. A lot of people are making 80 grand to 130 grand. Right. So it's like, maybe you're making somewhere between 7 grand and 10 grand a month. And when you get your first couple of deals and you're like, oh, I've got $2,000 in monthly recurring revenue in my business.
Yeah.
I'm not that far off from replacing my income. Like that just starts to light up. And I think that frankly, my feeling is just like, entrepreneurship is the way. Like, people will live happier lives. They can, be a net positive to their community. They can create jobs and like do good in the world, like, as entrepreneurs. And so Digital Side Hustle Academy has essentially just kind of been like a way to walk people through the process I went through of building my agency as a side hustle. Because like, building it as a side hustle is going to be like starkly different than building it full time. We have a few people, so we brought 15 people into the group for the beta testing, just to kind of put them through the course, see what needed to be changed, see what content needed to be added. We've had a few that are doing it full time, and then many that are doing it part time, or like alongside another business they're running or their job or whatever. And it's been 6 weeks. We've had, I think, like, the leader right now is sitting at like just over $1,500 a month in monthly recurring revenue. Nice. We've got 4 people that have crossed that $1,000 mark. And, that's been 6 weeks from like start of the course to today. So it's been really good. I think honestly, look, courses, I've never been like super high on courses.
Yeah.
I think that a good course has like the content you need to be successful, right? And like that's what I'm trying to do, is like make sure the content is here to be successful.
Yeah.
But a course is never a magic pill, right? So like people will often buy courses and think like, oh, I buy this course, I'm going to be successful. Like it's not easy. The course like accelerates the pace at which you are able to learn and like open your eyes to things. But like you still have to put the work in. And so I think the biggest risk with courses is like commitment risk. And so some people just aren't going to want to do it. Like they're going to sign up for it with like this. It's like, it's like saying you're going to do a diet, and how many people actually do the diet, right?
Yeah.
Like you can say you're going to do it all the time. You could go buy the food you need for your diet, but like you just kind of flake out on it. So, I mean, I think that for people that are like serious about wanting to get some monthly recurring revenue on the side and are like, I'm going to put the work in, like something like Digital Side Hustle Academy is like a really good fit, because, you'll learn and you'll like accelerate the pace at which you can grow. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not like giving it like a glowing like a glowing sales pitch here. That's just not my style.
No, I think I'm like, it's kind of funny. I am totally on board with that as well. Like, I believe like you said, entrepreneurship is the way, and there's just things that we can do in today's world to make that happen. And so the BAM school, which I've run, that's what this podcast is about. I did one in Thailand and one here in America, and it was basically to like bring people along. Like I gave people business models, and then I was like, okay, I'll coach you and I'll help you in that. And I realized I need to do it differently, where it's like I have a model that works, and then I teach the people. So it's more what you're doing with Digital Side Hustle Academy, where you already have this model that you're doing, that it's working, and then you're teaching it. Where I was just kind of like, hey, here's a bunch of options out there, and I'll help you get to it. And actually what was the most successful was when we actually did an agency and taught people an agency model. That was the easiest for people to pick up. But for people that want to, check it out, right now there's a landing page at digitalsidehustle.academy. You can check that out. And James is on X. I'll link it below, but _James Lincoln at X. You can catch him there. Any kind of last words you'd like to say to aspiring entrepreneurs or people that want to have their own business?
Yeah, and this has been awesome. Like I've loved doing this. I've done a few of these podcasts, and like it's fun to, it's fun to be on here and like think about some things critically, and so like last things I'd say to people that want to be entrepreneurs is like, if there's, I had a professor in business school who he was kind of the entrepreneurship, the acquisition guy. And like he would actively try and convince people not to do this, right? Because it's not easy to be an entrepreneur. Yeah. And it's like if it's not something that you can't put aside and you can't stop thinking about, like it's probably not for you. And like you'll be happier. Like there's nothing wrong with having a job and working at W-2. Like that's what most people in the world do, and there's nothing wrong at all with that. Like, but if you have that inkling of like, I think I can do this, I'm confident in myself. I want to take the jump. Like, find ways to do it. Yeah. Don't overcomplicate things. Like start slow if needs be, and like on top of that, like don't go after like the most difficult business model right away. Like be patient. Do I love digital agencies? No. Right? Like, is a digital agency the most fun thing in the world I could be doing? Probably no, not at all. But like, it's giving me a runway to go do bigger and better and things in the future. Yeah. And like, so you have to have patience. And you have to say like, what's the long play here? How can I get into entrepreneurship and stay in entrepreneurship for 15 years? Because over 15 years, like a lot of things are going to play out. And that's where I think just, you got to find a way to get started and find a way to make money easily, or with like the lowest barrier to making money as possible, and then just snowball from there. And I think that, you'll realize whether you're cut out for it, and you'll realize if you're, like you'll see quickly what it's really like when you're, signing people up for a product or service.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, James. It was great having you on the BAM School podcast. Excited to see where things go with Digital Side Hustle Academy, and looking forward to staying connected on X.
Yeah. Thanks, buddy. It's been awesome, man.
BAM School, facilitating a global, self-funding, disciple-making movement through business. Thanks for tuning in to the BAM School podcast. Find show notes, free courses, resources, and more at forbam.com.